are going to happen in this day. Well, we have today Claudia Baratini, Federico Irazábal, Danielle Mikey, you already know Danielle, and we have Carolyn Warren from Canada. So Daniel is going to make the introduction of all our speakers, our panelists, and before beginning, we would like to introduce Angela. So Angela is, I mean, I always forget what is her positions, but is commercial attached. Commercial attached from the Canada Embassy, and well, Canada is being with us in the whole process, like to think, to start doing the adequation for the Colombian arts to take them into, well, abroad. So I'm going to give the floor to Angela for her to tell us what are the plans at the Canada Embassy about the things that we have done together. And maybe she can help us a little bit, tell us a little bit about the importance of being here all together. Thank you very much, Dario. Well, as well, good afternoon to everyone. First of all, as Dario mentioned, my name is Angela Olarte, and I am commercial attached to the Canada Embassy in Colombia. Well, my position maybe makes no sense for the ones that are not in the media, in the environment of the arts, but well, the idea is to explain you a little bit. So first of all, I would like to thank Daniel and ProColombia, and to Dario, to Daniel for extending this important invitation to participate in this webinar, and also to give special thanks to all the speakers and the people in here for being willing to share reflections in this space. For the embassy, it's a pleasure to be part of this initiative because we are totally convinced that the experience interchange and better practices not only
oportunidades para crecer juntos. Pues la sesión de ayer, para los que estuvieron, espero que todos los que nos acompañan hoy hayan tenido la oportunidad de estar en la sesión de ayer, fue una prueba de lo enriquecedor que puede ser este tipo de diálogos y pues estamos seguros de que la discusión de hoy será igualmente interesante. Entre los panelistas de lujo que nos acompañan hoy, desde Canadá tenemos a Carolyn Warren, directora general del Programa de Apoyo para las Artes del Consejo de las Artes de Canadá, que es un organismo que hace una labor impresionante desde el sector público.
And it's an amazing work that it's done from the public sector in order to promote the Canadians' arts, well, inside Canada and outside Canada. So, well, of course, the experience of the council in this last month is going to be a very important witness or testimony, sorry, about the reflection of production and distribution in the middle of the pandemic. So as I said before, well, it's a pleasure to say hello, and especially to all the people who made possible this webinar. And we would like to tell you a little bit about the ways from the Canada Embassy Canada we support the creative industries, and also to tell you a little bit, well, some reflections. So we are focusing two front lines in a commercial program I am part of, and also a cultural diplomacy program that is led by my colleague, Nicolas Cardenas. So Nicolas will be joining to this session in a couple of minutes. So it's a challenge, you know, the pandemic is a challenge, more time with the family, but you need to coordinate much more things, traffic, family, children. So well, Nicolas will be here, and otherwise I'll keep on talking. As I just mentioned, we have a commercial program. In English, it's like the Trade Commissioner Service. And well, this is also part of the Global Affairs Ministry of Canada, which is like we have the idea to promote exportations and Canada investment around the world, and particularly for the Embassy Canada in Colombia, along the whole country. Well, in creative industries, what is the meaning for that? The idea is to look for opportunities to facilitate the Canadian contents in Colombia, but at the same time, to give support, to do co-production in different spaces, to look for different ways of cooperation, and to share best practices, like this space we are sharing today. In Canada, we have many allies for our statement. So the Ministry of Heritage of Canada is like the Ministry of Culture in Colombia. So they have started a great initiative. Well, it's an initiative to support the exportation, the Canadian exportations in creative industries, and to mobilize resources and organizations like the Arts Council, where Carolyn belongs, and everything for the internationalization for the Canadian arts. As part of this strategy, in 2009, there was a big commercial mission developed to Argentina, Mexico, and Colombia. And well, this mission, it's been essential and fundamental to set Colombia in the radar of Canada, that different to Colombia and Mexico, well, didn't have a cultural interchange tradition with Canada. Well, just like that, kind of commercial mission every year, we support commercial initiatives, scenic arts, music, in the editorial sectors, in the audiovisual sector, among others. So those are some examples of the things we have done. We facilitate the participation of Canadian representatives in scenic arts, which is a great scenic arts market that is generally done in Canada, but this year, well, was online, just like many other events. So, well, this year we were in Circular. Many people know Circular, but if you don't know it, it's a big music market. We have Canadian artists who participate in showcases. We have agents and programmers in the business table. So, well, basically, that's like the type of initiatives we support every single year. The other front line we work in is the cultural diplomacy program. Well, Nico is not here, so I will tell you. And for us, that is like the other side of the coins in regards with creative industries. It's a program that is kind of new for the embassy of Canada in Colombia, and also it supports the circulation of Canadian content in Colombia. But the main purpose or goal is to take advantage of the culture as trigger to mobilize conversations about subjects that are a priority of of Canada. So these subjects includes the diversion, human rights, equity, gender rights, reconciliation with indigenous population, among other subjects. So from this point of view, the support is not only limited to facilitate the presentation, cooperation, or a co-production of an artist, but actually this support seeks to take advantage of Canadian artists to take advantage to open dialogues and conversation about these subjects that are sometimes difficult and sensitive. So we do this by organizing workshops with university, interchanges with communities, promoting conversations with artists after a presentation, or looking for dialogue spaces in general with local authorities, others. So we have done it in the framework, like in the fair of the book. And well, for us, well, 2020, well, has presented many challenges. This was supposed to be the big year of Canada in the big theaters. Well, many of you were able to see the program that we have. It was a very ambitious program. At the end of the day, we could only have one out of 7 shows, a circus show, and the rest of the schedule or programs, well, it was rescheduled for 2021 in the second semester. Probably we hope to be able to do it, this big project in 2021 in the second semester for you to be able to be with us. However, 2020, as many people said yesterday, we have been forced to adapt to brand new conditions. So it's been a year of discoveries. The technology has given us the opportunity to facilitate meetings amongst programmers from Canada and Colombia, and we have created some attachments that are going to be very valuable for the work that we will have in the future. So technology has also permitted us this interchange of artists with the audiences. And as it was mentioned before in the last session, well, it's essential to create interest and to contribute with the with creating audiences or public. So we believe that the situation for 2021 in regards to Colombia, well, is uncertain, and we anticipate that our agenda in all the efforts would be focused on the streaming, but we do believe that we need to continue extracting the best, I mean, to this window of opportunity that the online or the streaming is giving to us. Well, so we consider that it's very valuable to expand the interchange, not only with artists, but also to have an interchange with the value chains of the scenic arts to share best practices in all the realization of a good show or performance. And well, I believe that it's very important to continue looking for different ways to assure that all this diversity of streaming agenda to have a diffusion that will allow us to take advantage, because I mean, we don't have a place where the information is centralized, so maybe we can all give some things to give much more production to assure that the information will reach brand new publics to take advantage or to create more audiences, of course. And in regards to the digital, it's going to be important to take advantage in order to make these small actions to help us to recover the confidence in order to for 2022 to enjoy live shows. So once again, thank you for the invitation. And well, right now I'm going to give the floor to the art characters in here. So thank you, Angela. Thank you for the support. And well, for all the people here in the webinar, we want to tell you that, well, this is what we are doing with ProColombia. And well, and the idea is to try to establish these attachments or this connection, not only about productions, but well, that is our plan for 2021. I hope soon, once again, with Fest, we will do it again, but at least we need to start with conversation that will lead us to interchange that truly is going to be really productive for both countries. So thank you, Angela, for all the support that you have given to the program that we have with ProColombia. So let's get started. Okay, thank you, Dario. Thank you, Angela. Thank you for your intervention. I am going to present our guest today. So I want to remind you that you have the possibility to listen the simultaneous translation in Spanish. So Caroline will be speaking, so for attendees will be easy to understand by listening to the translation. Well, let's continue. Well, as Angela said, we have, I mean, a great panel. We have people here. They have great ideas. They are very creative. Everyone, I believe, they have something in mind, and the idea is how to transform the awareness or the consciousness of our society through the art. So I will introduce. So today we have Carolyn Warren. She's, well, recently she was arts in the band's art for the creativity, and she was vice president of the art programs. She was supervising different artists in all these phases in visual arts and media, scenic arts, theater, music, literature, arts and translations, indigenous arts as well, and interdisciplinary programs in all the disciplines and sectors. Before, Caroline was the director of cultural program at the CRC, with based in Montreal. She was responsible for different programs, interviews, local music, and so on. Well, this is in Radio 1 and Radio 2. Well, along the career, so she has participated in all the artistic practices supported by the Canadian Council in different contests. So she is also a defender of the importance of the digital technology in production and artistic diffusion, contemporary. So this makes Carolyn a great candidate to supervise a team working for checking the impact of Canada, the different communities where they work. Also, we have Claudia Baratini. She has a lot of experience in cultural projects and international cooperation. So she has some studies in history and dance. So she was also Minister of Culture in Chile. So she's been advisor in Latin America by the Foundation Rockefeller. And she was also director of the Foundation La Morada. Since 2010, she was the director of international affairs and co-productions of the foundation. Well, she built an internationalization strategy for the scenic arts in contemporary arts in Chile. And she is also working in co-production. So currently she's the executive director of Campbell Productions. And then we have Federico Irazábal. She's artistic director of the Necessities International Festival and representative of the National Ministry of Culture so he's the artistic director of the International Festival in Buenos Aires. And besides that, he was also the director of Preambulos magazine. So he published a couple of books and anauratico theater books. So as a professor, he works in the university and the Buenos Aires University. And he's been executive director of the provincial independent theater of the province of Buenos Aires, and he's also been a representative of the Ministry of Culture, director of the National Theater Institute. So, well, we can start with the discussion or the conversation. There is no question about it. It's gonna be, it's been a year of meeting and with a huge crisis, not only in the cultural sector, but in many other sectors as well. But at the same time, I feel that it's been a year with many, many opportunities. I believe that everyone somehow we have been able to be resourceful towards the crisis, and we have been trying to motivate the sectors. We've been trying to create or generate different initiatives to overcome this crisis that, well, for now, we have no clue when it's going to be over. We have no idea. If somebody said that this is going to be over in March 2021, it's wrong. It's a very, very difficult challenge. And well, it's very complex challenge also to note, when we will be able to start back again with the cultural activity the way they used to be. So the first question, what or which do you think is the current panorama of the production and the circulation of cultural artistic projects in our markets? So what do you think, Claudia? Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you. To the organizers, the embassy, thanks. I feel really honored to share this space with you. And well, I also would like to congratulate you because I do believe that it is a moment of great uncertainty and the possibility to reflect all together. We have to be in charge of production in different parts of the planet. Well, in a year that it's been very, very aggressive, 2020, I believe that it's a year that we are going to remember forever and ever because of the impact that it has in the planet, in the whole planet. It's a crisis huge that will make us remember. I believe that the sector, I don't have numbers, but I believe that the impact of the pandemic or that the pandemic has had in our activities, well, it's inconceivable. We never thought that this was going to happen, that this scenario with this characteristic was going to happen. and the scenic arts in the whole planet, it's being frustrated, and in a very similar way with the closing of the theaters, the cultural institutions, and the difficulty to establish a relation with the public, with the audience, which is the base of our activity. As you already know, of the scenic arts, well, it's a situation that has really affected the sector in a very dramatic way everywhere in Chile, and I believe that in Chile is not different to Colombia or some other place or to Canada. In Latin America, this crisis shows, I mean, not only how fragile the cultural sector is, but also the conditions in which the sector of the scenic arts works or function, the whole chain from the artist to the last workers, especially in Latin America. They work in a very fragile environment, in an informal way. But it shows, I mean, the justice or the injustice with this crisis. Like it happens in the society, this is a pandemic that over the human expenses, and I mean, it has showed that also the tremendous inequity, social inequity that characterize Latin America, the fragility our sector works, and well, around the world there is like a collapse of the coexistence, of the relations of the humanity with the nature. So I have the feeling that we are in a crisis that is truly has Bible dimensions, I might say it. And in this sense, to hypothesize the how it's going to be. I mean, not only the deadlines, but if we are really going to overcome this in the same way, or I believe no, I believe we are not. I mean, I believe that definitely after this 2020, nothing is going to be the same. Everything is going to change. And well, I hope as well that in a positive way. And well, I don't have, I mean, a recipe or a formula, but I agree with Danielle that the perspective for coming back to a normal life as we used to know, and that is really uncertain. And I might say that obviously the main characteristics that has occurred around the world and also in Chile is that the world, the theater world in the scenic arts, it is turning into the internet, online streaming. It's a very intensive war with communications that was not the most important characteristic of the sector. Technologies were only used essentially for the technical aspects, automation, for example, ticketing, cameras, and some others. And we didn't use so many technological parts in the creative part, especially in the contemporary theater. But well, it's a sector that is very far away in regards to the creative parts. However, the capacity of resilience, and the creativity of an artist fast in Chile has generated an interesting production, online production that has started getting some audiences, commercial audiences as well. And now we have a theater with results that are very, very interesting, that are not only the recorded the shots in the stage, but well, of course there is. But we have also seen a lot of innovation capacity also for playing with technologies, generating certain products. Very, very interesting that are able to generate something very innovative, something hybrid that collects all the theater's experiences, doing streaming online, for example, generating, I might say it, attention, sorry, and interest for the by the public. So we were very strong in the winter. We had an offer that has a lot of, well, we don't know the numbers very good, but there were a very good response of the public. And as while the year was passing by, the response of the public it's been reduced for the activities and for the pay activities, for the free activities. So we have started competing with brand new reality with opening to the quarantines, policies, and so on. And this is competing with, I mean, people is a little bit tired because of being in front of a screen in the computer. So now the situation is really fragile, very delicate with the arrival of the summers. Well, this is it's a general overview of what it's been happening the whole year. But now, not everybody. I mean, what I'm describing is not. I mean, it's a sector in the scenic arts, but not everybody has been able to reinvent online. Obviously, there is a situation, a labor situation, which is very delicate with very few public supports, and we are in a crisis, humanitarian crisis right now, related with artists. So it's a situation that it's very, very complex, but where the installation of this leap to the future, this installation of the digital revolution that arrived so fast, evidently is producing creative options and opening windows of opportunity for others. Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. You're totally right. The uncertainty that we have in this moment is not going to be gone only with the arrival of the vaccine or the vaccination. We're going to have to be working a little bit more because, well, we feel that certain audience has been lost in the capacity of resilience. I mean, it's taking us to these new generations to make us believe that the scenic art is what you see through the screen. So there is a lot to do. So what do you think about this? Well, I do agree with what you were just talking about, how fragile in terms of materials and in the scenic arts. I believe that this is applicable to all Latin America. So I believe that there are few countries that have the possibility to say something different about this. So I believe that Chile and Colombia and Argentina as well, we can think in Uruguay and Brazil and in the different realities in the sectors, in the scenic arts in particular, they have been living these years like an evidence of the fragilities. I mean, how fragile they are than in regular situations. Well, you were talking about the normal life. How would be the next normal life? I mean, I don't like this word anymore, but well, I'll take it because the word is being used a lot. And we have the old-fashioned installed normal life in the creative boosting, and in that condition we didn't see the good condition, or if we see the conditions, they were buried by the practice. So now what is happening is that we have the productions conditions in evidence, and now we have the need or the necessity of how to reset or how to restart essentially with what is related with public organizations existing in different countries depending on how is the structure and the cultural organization. And well, in the case of Argentina, where we have a National Institute Theater, which is an institute that depends of the Ministry of Culture of the nation, with funds of the nation, and operates in all the national territories, an organization that subsidize the production basically. So right now we have a conflict in terms of production, what we can produce, how we can produce, and essentially what defines the scenic. Because as we already know, is a big problem. Is what it always happens when there is a regulation that is out of the Congress, like in the case of Argentina. We are very proud. We have a national theater law, and then we have different replicates in the different provinces, like Buenos Aires, in the province of Buenos Aires, and some others. The big subject is that the law has to be related in regards to the subjects. I mean, the first part of the law needs to define what is the object to be rules. And when we think in the scenic arts sector, what we need, what we have is the fact that in front of audience, we are all alive. So we have a bureaucratic problem right there. How we solve that the law presents an object and as a subject is absolutely dynamic. And as we already know, once you have a law or regulation to support the culture, we need to leave it there. You cannot just take it back to the Congress. So how to define an object that is so dynamic like the scenic arts sector? It's a sector that permanently it's been mutating. So the big problem is that in 2020, we were forced. I mean, traditionally, we found from the standpoint of the language, we find that there are some certain artists that will change the treatment of the language, and this is generating mutations. But I don't know, the decade, the 50s, they say that Baker was not theater because it was not working the notion of character in the way the traditional realistic used to work. So right now we cannot discuss if this theater or not, but the same happened with the, I mean, if we talked about the 17th century, I mean, if the opera has 3 or 4 steps, I mean, and today we have a crisis which really affects radically the theater because of what Claudia says, because this sanitary crisis in the whole planet redefine, at least for now, we don't know what is going to happen in the future, redefine the way we connect each other. So if the way we connect socially among the people and the theater is one of the artistic disciplines that works essentially about the meeting or gathering of people, well, we need to think how to redefine or not this notion that was used a lot this year of presentiality. I mean, there is something that this year is in the center of the stage from the critics, from the generals, cultural management. I mean, is this word presentiality, to be present, because the theaters, and I believe that Claudia and Danielle, we all know the theater, we work in regards to the conditions. We were using everything. And I mean, in some time, the theater was a big machinery. And well, if I think about in the Argentinian theater, it's an independent theater. It's a theater with a small theater, with a small staff, with very few clothes, very few lightings, but it has really strong artistic power that really represents us around the world. So this happens in Colombia, this happens in Chile, and in many parts of Latin America. So we are representatives of the theater. So we are not the theater, the big scenic machinery. That is not our definition. As sectors in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, they say no, that is not theater because the theater was understood in the way it was understood in the 40s, in the 30s. And they understood that the independent theater with the stairs, all those things have nothing to do with the theater. And there were many discussions. Even now, we have those discussions. We have historical files to understand how gradually something was changing from some standpoints. So some things were defined like not to be theater. So what we have today is that theater has lost a lot of things, devices, apparatus. The theater is absolutely free, where we can have characters or voices, where we could have lights or not, where we could have a stage or nothing. we were just opening the theater perception, but the only thing that was absolutely necessary is the definitions of Peter Brook, that for being theater, somebody needs to be right there, and somebody needs to be right there watching, and somebody needs to be right there see it presenting. So the crisis that we have right now is that the only element that has survived in the last decades that defines the theater is prohibited now because of the sanitary policies. And right there, the artists, they have to see, they have to check what to do because that was the future of the artist. And what happened in Argentina, and I agree with the description of Claudia was doing about Chile. In the first months, Argentina had problems of the, well, problems has the most extended quarantine. We have quarantine from March 20 up to October, and that was a quarantine that was really, really strong and close and very, very strong. And a couple of weeks ago, they just started open some independent theaters. But for you to have a better idea or dimension, in Buenos Aires, for example, there is like 200 independent theaters. So there are some that are in conditions of working because of the ventilation or for different sanitary reasons. But it's a reality, so we need to do things in regards to what doctors and specialists say. So what happened is that there was a paralysis and then there was a first response. It was very easy, that is like to have everything online, so what we have recorded from those old festivals where we presented in the past, and we have the audio visuals, and we just have everything, upload everything online. And then slowly down, the artists, in a very resilient way, in a very creative way, they started generating language, generating some kind of language that we cannot define right now, or TV or audiovisuals or digitals. I mean, we don't know what is that. It's an enormous potential, the language where they find mechanisms for reinventing the presentiality. What I want to say is, I mean, the new generations are going to believe that this is theater. For many years, we continue with this streaming. The new generation are going to believe that this is theater. The big problem is that these new generations, they have already understood that this way to connect is the way to be part of the social. These new generations have already understood that the love connection is digital. I mean, I used to play it in the farm, in the lands, and I used to play with the body of my friends. Now the tool is what I have in front of me, the phone. But before the pandemic, for the generation of the millennials, computer was already the real universe and presential universe of their lives. They do not see the difference that I see of the presential, real, and the virtual, because they understand that the virtual is real. Then this notion that the virtual has to do with the real, it's going to affect the scenic art sector. But it was going to happen with pandemic or without pandemic. When these audiences are incorporated to the cultural, they were going to incorporate it in that capacity, which implies different capacities. So I wonder why the big phenomena of independent theater, the micro theater, small plays that last only 15 minutes. It's very variable. I mean, somebody that was created, that was raised in the 60s and had to read for days and for days a book in order to understand. Now the consumption is not the same, so we can behave like apocalyptic or as integrated. Apocalyptic is like, I'm gonna be moody, I'm gonna be close in my house, and I do not participate in this event where I was invited to participate. And thanks to this, I am able to be here in Colombia, in Chile at the same time, in Canada at the same time. Last year, probably because of the agenda, I wouldn't have been able to travel the way we are doing it right now. So we are all incorporating this new reality and artists as well. So this does not mean that this is the end. Maybe this is a way to incorporate these tools like part of the language. We don't know where it goes, but probably a big part of the tool of linguistic and theater tools that were developed this year will stay absorbed by the big theater or theatrical practice that is going to be defined in regards to what the new generation generates and in regards to what the ones that believe that are part of the old generations have resistance. Well, you have said very important things about how fragile is our sector that is totally exposed right now. We all knew that this was going to happen in some moment, that there was going to be a redefinition. We didn't know when exactly and how strong it was going to be. But it arrived and is right here. And now we need to work on that because we need to look ourselves in the mirror and start working and to reinvent ourselves. It's a horrible word. And well, second thing I would like to highlight is that, well, you're right, our connections are based on digital platforms right now. All the connections, all the links, everything is happening online, application, digital apps. In some moment, this has to change, otherwise we are going to continue with this disconnection. Physical is very, very important. I would like to continue with Caroline. So, Caroline, what is your perception about this first question, Caroline?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. And again, my apologies for not speaking Spanish. I did take Spanish lessons many years ago, but it's been too long for me to try to communicate in your language. You've actually, the speakers have actually touched on many subjects, I find, from the different areas of discussion. So I will try to pick up on some that I think there's a lot of commonalities in the issues and questions that you're raising. As you may be aware, in Canada, we are facing a very serious second wave of the virus at the moment. And as you've mentioned, there are promises of a vaccine in the new year, but we don't know how quickly it will arrive. We don't know, frankly, how the public will respond to the vaccine either. So just as you have all expressed, there is ongoing uncertainty about the duration of the pandemic. And in Canada, as in your countries, it has had a devastating effect on artists and on the arts sector. There have, of course, we have banned gatherings, we have the same travel restrictions, border closures that have, of course, affected touring, not only internationally, but also within Canada, and have also affected the creation and production and obviously presentation of the arts across the country. There were parts of Canada that tried to rush to reopen. Because we are a federal government, the provincial governments have their own decision-making authority over when, for example, theaters are allowed to open or when they have to be closed. Quebec, which, as you know, is a very strong cultural force in Canada, was the province that was most anxious to open immediately, wanted to be back to normal, whatever that meant. But unfortunately, they were hit by the second wave like everybody else. And in fact, the impact of reclosing theaters and concert halls that had started to reopen was even more devastating for them than the impact on other organizations that had remained closed or dormant during the earlier portion of the pandemic. I speak to you from the perspective of a funding agency. So the Canada Council is arm's length from the government. And we support artists and organizations and groups to create, produce, and distribute art. So one of the things that we have done during the pandemic is to actually collaborate with our federal government to distribute emergency funds. And currently we have distributed 2 waves of emergency funds, largely in the initial phases targeting organizations that were threatened with insolvency. So within the country, Canada Council alone gives operating grants to about 1,200 different arts organizations across different disciplines. And without exception, all of them have been touched by the pandemic. Although given some of the emergency measures that the government put in place, many of the organizations were able to keep their fundamental basic expenses covered by, of course, cutting contracts with artists and with cultural workers and others, which means that the real brunt in some ways of the pandemic in Canada is being felt by the individual artists. And this is a huge source of concern for us and for the sector, because we are seeing many artists either having to change careers, quite literally, and retrain or begin to think about this, because the possibility of earning a living when there's literally no work is such a challenge. So our next emergency funding proposal that we will assist the government in delivering is going to target a lot of those individual artists and individual creation projects. We're also, and this is aligned with what I'm hearing from you, we have been supporting a pivot to digital since the very beginning of the pandemic. It's been clear that for many organizations, the idea of a digital presence was a way to maintain a contact with an existing audience. What I have always felt about digital is that it is in fact an opportunity to establish connections with entirely new audiences. But in our country, certainly, the understanding, what I would call the digital literacy of the arts sector was very, very low. We created what we called a strategic digital fund 4 years ago to try to help organizations in the sector develop a deeper understanding of how to use technology for creation, for production, and for dissemination. But of course, COVID came along and it became a crisis where all these organizations were forced to confront these new screen content realities, many of them very poorly equipped to take on the challenge of trying to figure it out at the same time as you're implementing it, flying, what is that, the analogy about to designing the plane as it's flying. So we have very much supported through our regular programs and through special funding initiatives, the ability of artists and organizations to experiment with technology, to try new ways of presenting it. We're trying to push beyond the idea that streamlining content is the answer, because quite frankly, it is not. And we did see in Canada that there were many, many organizations that just captured and streamlined content, could not find a public because it wasn't discoverable. And of course, there are questions of access and remuneration to artists, because we haven't got a solid business model, revenue model yet for online arts presentation. That's something we absolutely have to deal with, as we also have to deal with fundamental questions about who has access to technology, both to produce the work and also to consume the work. But I feel very strongly, and I think, Federico, you just said this, that we were starting to hit a transition point with screen consumption well before the pandemic. And in the same way that the pandemic has exacerbated all kinds of fragility within the sector, and Claudia, you were talking about that, we see the same thing in Canada, that the ecosystem was not healthy before the pandemic, and that the weaknesses have in fact become much clearer in light of the crisis. And those weaknesses are not only unsustainable business models and practices, but also deep inequity, deep issues of racism and exclusion of certain, both on the level of artistic production and also in terms of the audiences. that are connecting with some of the art that we've been creating and funding in the country for, you know, 150 years. So digital is in a similar way that the lack of capacity and understanding of digital was very, very starkly revealed during the pandemic. And all of these various aspects of weakness in our arts ecosystem are what we're now trying to address for what will eventually be a recovery or rebuilding, we like to call it, because recovery suggests you want to go back to something that existed before, and we don't believe that that's possible, that there will ever be a return to what was considered normal in the past. I think we've moved beyond it. And not only in the arts. I mean, Claudio, you were talking about the climate crisis, and I agree with you. I think this is really a turning point on a very much larger scale than arts and culture. And that I do hope that in the rebuilding, we will actually create something that is more sustainable. But from a council, from our perspective, that sustainability has to relate not only to business models, but also to these key questions of equity and access and inclusion. I mean, it's been absolutely impossible to not confront the social justice movements we've seen in the United States and around the world in the last 6 to 8 months. And within Canada, as you probably know, we've had a very strong Indigenous reconciliation movement for the past 3 or 4 years, and a real momentum to drive towards something called, you know, decolonization, which is the final stage of moving away from that former, what would be described as a state of exclusion and oppression. So there's all of these additional concerns that are part of what needs to be, I think, a reflection heading into a period of rebuilding. And what we have seen is that the rush of some organizations that were very, very embedded in what I would call, frankly, a more elite and privileged relationship with a more elite and privileged audience. Those were the organizations that most want to return to what was before. And the underserved voices are the voices saying, we don't want to go back there. We want to see something new. We want to rebuild on a different model going forward, and we want to be included in it. And so from our perspective as a funder, that's what we are going to be looking to support when we get to a place where we're not, by the way, right now, we're still in a crisis. But when we can see the opportunity for stimulus or supporting a rebuilding of the sector, that's what we will be looking to rebuild.
Gracias, Carolyn. Sí, tienes razón. Es muy interesante.
Thank you, Caroline. It's very interesting, the presence of the digital media. Well, maybe it's generating a brand new connection with the public, but at the same time, I feel that the digital ecosystem is having a reconstruction, a rebuilding, just like the sector, trying to understand or to extend, more than understanding, I mean, trying to extend to the whole population, because, well, it's true. Who has access to the digitals? I mean, in what areas of the planet? I mean, we are trying to do scenic arts and how we can get connected with all of them. What makes it really interesting, definitely, is that we are getting into a brand new era. Definitely, we are witnessing two things: the change of the way we see or live life, and also how to face the crises, viruses, wars. I mean, our generation didn't face the First or the Second World Wars, I mean, or zombie attacks that I thought that was going to happen, that I was going to be living a zombie attack or something like that. Well, that never happened. This was biological, but this is a different level. Of course, there's a lot of things. So I'm going to give the floor to Dario with the second question that we have. Yes, we are the zombies now. We are the zombies. It's like in the movies, you know, to where everybody was scared of everyone. Do not go out because you don't know who's zombie and you're going to be beaten. Okay, so, well, this is what's happening now. So that's what is happening at the very beginning because, well, my mother is an old lady, and, well, I was going to the grocery shopping, and then in the streets, you feel that sensation of do not get close to me. And I believe in this. I mean, Danielle and I, we have been producing different events, all kind of events. And what is happening is what always happened with the theaters, that it's much more personal. The meeting, the gathering, the theater is a personal meeting. I mean, when you drink a cup of wine, where you have dinner, where you meet during the festival, I mean, that was something really personal. So those meetings, those gatherings, well, they have been obviously disrupted, especially for all that we are facing or living right now. So I believe that we have listened to redefinition, reinvention. I mean, the language in the scenic arts has been taken in all the sector, but I believe that in scenic arts, this is something special, so that there is a word that really calls our attention, and is the hybrid contents. We are now talking about the hybrid contents. I don't know, San Martin, I believe they did a schedule or a cycle of hybrid contents. And I believe that this is taking us, I mean, it's showing us how we can live the two things, which is what you have already said before. And well, there's a question, an interesting question, and is, so what are the new necessities for productions? Because the budget that we used to have these artists, scenography, the stage, this is how we are going to do the distribution. But right now the budget has changed. Right now we need to have all the audio visual, we need the streaming. In certain moments, we need to have a brand new model of business. In the past, it was like we received tickets, we received the government support, and that was the business model. But now, with all that we are living in festivals, in meetings, in gatherings, how do you think the needs for production are going to change? We're going to have to hire fewer artists. I mean, how the budgets or the projections are going to change from the production standpoint. I don't know, Caroline, if the question is clear, and if you want to start.
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, actually. I would start by saying that we're still at a very early stage in understanding how the arts can and might evolve through digital technology. I think there will always be performing arts as we understand and love performing arts today. But I do believe that in 10 years' time, what we'll see on screens will be something quite different from a streaming version of a live event on a stage, and quite different from a video or a film. And I think between, and already in the area of some of the immersive technologies, AR, VR, MR, some of the experiments and production that's happening, bringing together technologists with artists, and performing artists are very interesting creatures when you put them in a technology space. It's ironic that virtual reality became the purview of filmmakers and video makers, because in fact, they've always worked in two dimensions, whereas performing artists understand space. They have always understood space, and they are the natural vehicle for the evolution of 360-degree technologically created experiences. So when you give artists who have a performing arts background access to technology, access to those who know how to use it, and you help them work together, then I think what we will see over the next 10 years is actually an evolution of new art forms that will be for the screen and for screen audiences. And when I say this, I know there are always some people in Canada who are alarmed by the idea. They think I'm suggesting that technology in the screen will replace the experience of a theater, and that will never be the case. And we know that will never be the case. But that does not mean that one can't have a different kind of screen experience based on the performing arts. But we don't know what that evolutionary form will look like yet. It hasn't been happening long enough. So this year, for example, in Canada, we did an exchange, a skills exchange with the United Kingdom, We brought filmmakers, technology makers, performing artists together across 2 countries. We created a cohort, and they're working together to see what they can come up with. We're not demanding a final product, but if they get one, if they get to a point where they have some kind of prototype, we will help them to find a distribution platform for that. So I think I'm making your question more complex, because what I'm suggesting is it's not just a question of saying, here's more money, incorporate new technology. I think that the artists themselves need to be introduced to the ways in which that technology can benefit them. And that's not a straightforward process. I think it involves a level of collaboration between the creative industries and the arts sector that certainly in my country are not traditional easy relationships. They've always been, the creative industries have always been the for-profit, those commercial people producing that stuff that's not real pure art. And then the artists have felt that they were doing something purer in intention and form. I personally have never felt that there needs to be that level of distinction between those 2 fields. And there's never been a more important moment in time, in my opinion, for a cross-pollination of the know-how of our artists in the art sector with the creative industries workers. And I think something magical will happen as a result, but it isn't going to happen on its own. It needs to be facilitated. So it may need to be built into a budget, but it has to also be facilitated by experts who understand how to use the material and the technology.
No había abierto mi micrófono. Gracias, Carolyn. Creo que tienes un
Well,
punto.
thank you, Caroline. You have a very important key point. Actually, Federico was talking about that, and is the matter of how we evolve from the theatrical standpoint, how we can start creating different and how to bring brand new technologies to our world. So I do believe that Canada has given an important step in the Ibero-American Festival of Theater 15 years ago. We saw connections between the digital and the technologicals with the La Tempestad or different products or so, well, very innovative ways. And I believe that now is the moment to begin to assess or to evaluate and to think, well, how we can produce differently. What happened now if I want to go international? So what are the needs or necessities for production that I have? Because precisely these brand new models, we need to find this brand new business model and how they're going to change the production. So I believe that the dialogue that you propose between the technological and theatricals, I mean, for us, sometimes for us it's very difficult to mix it, and it's very difficult. And sometimes it's difficult to do. So I don't know, Federico, what do you think? What's your opinion from the production standpoint? Well, I believe that all the subjects are getting connected in these complex words. I mean, so with the capacity that we need to have to make projections to the future. So I definitely agree with what Carolyn mentioned in this last question. In regards to the needs of distinction, and I believe, Dario, that the place to think about the theaters, I mean, in your own speech, you mentioned the some experiences from 15 years ago. So I just forget what was the experience. It doesn't matter for now. But I mean, if we believe, probably we believe or we think in the castors in Berlin. For how many years the actor, the performance was in front of the audience? Well, the relation that we have with the castles was through screens, different screens. They were working from the presence, from a public that was not in the natural environment. I mean, what I mean is that they were not at home. Here, the problem that we are facing today is not that we can take the public to the theater to see on a screen, like it happened last old cinematographic level. Now the artists want to compete with the stimulus that the house, how to dialogue, how to have a conversation with the natural way where the artist gets seen, because when the public goes to a theater, they go to a physical space. I don't say theater, I mean in the architectural way. No, I mean when somebody moves to go to a play, for example, is very different to when a play goes to meet the persons. So I believe that this is something that we need to work on and to start thinking. Somebody in the chat mentions about Ender as an experience of virtual reality. So I remember 3 years ago in the FIBA, we brought a friend's show, Le Fallait Lave, and it was shown in the theater festivals, and there wasn't any actors. So there was a recording that was used with augmented reality, and the public was not interacting with the other spectators. Everybody was isolated in this augmented reality, living in a specific scene. And that was shown in a theater festival, and it didn't generate any short circuits. So the community understood that as a technological practice that involves an scenic play, because there was in some time an actor that recorded, and now the public was watching that in a physical space. But the last year when Daniel and you were here, the public, we opened the International Buenos Aires Festival. That was an scenic festival with more than 20 years of tradition, and the people went to the theater, and suddenly there was a movie right there. And after a couple of minutes, the people were waiting an actor to show up. And then we get the people out of the movie theater, and they were walking across the Broadway of Buenos Aires to 2 blocks, the Broadway of Buenos Aires. And the people were walking right there, and then they finally get into a theater plate. And what were the expectations? Well, the movie ended, or they thought, and then the theater play is starting, and then another movie started, and along the 2 hours, not in the movie theater, in the theater there were performance live. So what was the performance of this event? In the public. That was in Sati thought. He was thinking how to create a performance event where the audience is the own performer, but they don't know it. And it has to do like how to walk and through the Corrientes Avenue. We were walking right there when we go to the obelisk to celebrate that we won World Soccer Cup, or when we have strikes or riots against the government. So this avenue is the place for entertaining, but it's also the place for manifestation of the collective. And this project had something to discuss about the theater, which is the performer has to do live with the spectator in the same area. So I believe that what is happening right now is that the system is totally radical. Now for the future, for the companies, for the great events, obviously we need to start redistributing the energy, the funds, that's what I mean, because everything was modified. I need to think now in an international festival in this contest where there are no international transit, but there is a whole area where the whole design of the festival does not have anymore. I mean, we are organizing a festival for February. It was announced the last week is going to be a presential festivals with a virtual and digital sound, but basically it's going to be a presential fest. Of course, we have plans for the Z1, Z2 in regards to what might happen in all these months, but in the design of this festival, there is something that there is not actually. That there is not there is an international transit because the boundaries are closed. So we have the possibility to receive neighbor countries, but it's very complex to receive somebody from Europe, for example, or from North America. or from the north of South America. So we are going to a whole redesign, total redesign. It could be apocalyptic, and we just stay very depressed at home with the sensation that we can't, or we can redesign as a business model. What sense? I mean, today we can start from a territory and we can develop strategies to amplify the spectators, not only in the FIBA to have a federal fest, but this federal fest, artistic, is not for the spectators. I mean, the spectators do not travel from the provinces to Buenos Aires to see a theater because the distances are way too long. The companies, they traveled and they participate in the FIBA. So if we want somebody from a province, with these hybrid modes, we have the possibility to reach any territory inside the country and out of the country. Of course, in this area where the presential or the physical in the corporal is totally restricted. So I believe that we are going to an absolute hybrid model where we are going to be able to combine with a very good synergy the necessity, as Danny said, of being physically embodied in a space, in a specific place, but also to play plenty with what the world is giving us, the internet, for example, that, I mean, we cannot continue thinking in the space and time as we used to think in the 60s or in the 70s. I mean, the notion of the time, of the space, of the time was totally modified. It was being modified. And then in 2020, directly, it blasted. So what is going to happen for the future? We don't know, but we know that there is redesign to be done. Thank you, Federico. There is something very interesting in what you mentioned and the FIBA experience. Well, the theaters and the scenic arts has always been an experience of the public, of the audience. So a meeting, it's been always, I mean, we can see the person live and we are with the person right there. So what you propose is very interesting because from the scenic standpoint, we start to think in experiences, in how we do new experiences with the tools that we have, how we can use them so that the theater continue being live art to propose something to the public, so the public can feel something different now from the black box. But this is something that has already begun. The ideas of have scenic spaces and spaces that are not part of the, I mean, that does make experiences to be very different. In Colombia, we have some experiences that have to do with dance, like Delirio, and there is, it's like a restaurant and it's a party, and there are many things that you can do, and you can have different experiences. So in this sense, I believe that the digital is like an important part for this, and we need to think in how to get close to the public and to be close to them by using all these tools so that we can continue doing what the scenic arts do. Thank you. So Claudia, what is your perception of the new productions? Well, it's been very interesting. I agree with everything that it's been said. And well, basically is the idea, we have the idea that this is a leap to the future. The technology, digitalization as well, it's going to modify the way to do. We need to continue talking in order to see how we modify the way we work in production, because everything is going to change. I mean, I have the perception that anything is going to be the same in the theater, in the scenic arts after this. This does not mean that that we are not going back to the theater, or that we are going to continue to doing everything on the screen, or I mean, I believe this leap is something that is going to generate from the creation standpoint and innovation that was not conceived before, well, it's going to happen to me or to the artist. And well, in these times, we can see all that it's been said in regards to the audiences and the public. It's a different type of audience. I mean, all the culture in the social networks generate an spectators, shows, and so on. And also the spectator is part of the show as well. And is not only the passive subject in the dark listening. It's modifying the art, is always anticipating. And you have given many examples given by Federico, the experiences, I mean, things that have been done here, seeing the festivals in Santiago. I mean, for many years, with many experiences, we have had immersive experiences generating new ways for interactions with the public, with a much more active public or audience, which is the result of this cultural change. So I believe that digitalization is bringing something very similar to what the printer did. I mean, because it totally changed the way to disseminate the culture. So, well, this is going to generate a lot of changes. So I was really interested in seeing from the things that Carolyn was saying. I believe that here, and also Federico, for the production, we can be, for example, having a conversation right here, but we can be thinking in a project right now. Now we have the possibility to reach more audiences, to imagine projects, transnational projects. It has an enormous potency or powers, but maybe we don't know how to work on it, because it's not only to have a play online or a brand new play on the screens. It could be seen from Japan or from everywhere, and they're going to see it. So there is an abundance of digital offers. It's like when you get into a big supermarket, there are many and many of products, many or thousands of the same product. And we need to select, as we already know, the strategies for marketing and merchandising. They are essential in an offer of this magnitude, like the one that we have right now. This is not enough. I mean, it's not enough only to be in the new theater with the connection and to exist. What we really need is public, is audience, is experience. It's not going to be only live experience, but we need a person to look at us in that sense. That, I mean, the sector is not prepared. The sector, I mean, we are not in the understanding the algorithms or the recommendations. I mean, this system is the evil systems of how it worked for the market. The system to loyal or to catch more audience. So around the theater world, at least in Chile, everybody is not well illustrated. And the ones that we started producing in online nowadays, we realize that sometimes you have very good things, but you don't have audience, and you have a great potential. So I dare to say that there are some important challenges right there that are very, very important, of different tools, and to know how to use these instruments to get up to date ourselves and to transfer the know-how, as Caroline said, from different areas to our business models and to our production processes. because the potentials of the connectivity is not automatic. And I believe there's a lot of work to do, and there is a lot of international cooperation. I believe the Latin American or Ibero-Americans, we share the same language, which is the second most popular language on the planet. We need to produce many projects in cooperation, strong projects, because there is an audience and there is a huge market. And I believe that this national logic of producing is a logic that we are going to have to overcome. I mean, I don't know, we have a festivals, we have Santiago Mil in January, in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, in February. How many things we can do? But what I want to say is that when the potentiality of the audience grows in all Latin American or the whole population, it's required also projects produced with that ambition. And that's why it is the moment for cooperation, social networks, to be able to take this opportunity for us. That's it. Thank you. Well, thank you, Claudia. I believe that there is something very interesting here to summarize a little bit the comments that you all have done. And well, we need to see it back again who's watching at us. So that is the new productions challenge. We need to start thinking specifically like three main things, three important things in between of all the things we have talked. So first of all, we need to see the audience is not consuming the same way. They consume very short content. Sometimes we see something digital and then 1.5 minutes. They say that it's too long. So 1.5 minutes and it hasn't even started. So I believe that it's very important for us as producers to start seeing, watching the audience. Second, we need to think in a very different business model, different to the one that we used to have. We know that it's going to be very difficult for the theaters to open in the 100% of capacity. So the business model is going to change a lot, and we need to start exploring the business model. And we need to see how we generate new ways to generate incomes in these digital businesses. And at the same time, the marketing strategy, we need to introduce ourselves in a different way, and it is important, the dialogue with digitals and with the new technologies. I mean, how we made the scenic arts to be connected with the new technologies, for us to be able to bring these schemes that come from different technologies to our disciplines, and well, they start having conversations for having this new product that we need the public to see it. I mean, it's to get the public back again by using these new tools. It's the closing of what Claudia said, the challenge of the new language and in production. Definitely we need to start seeing the production from a different standpoint by incorporating different things that we never thought before. And well, I feel that in between, I mean, this is very good because we can see back again how we need to do tryouts and error back again in order to see how the public or the audience is consuming back again. So, well, thank you very much for these answers. And well, we will be rethinking as creators or producers in scenic arts. So, Daniel, go ahead. Well, I consider that when we advance in this crisis that we have in this moment, in every single corner, we're going to find new questions. And they are problems that we need to overcome, especially now. And well, I feel that right now, there's going to be some collateral damage, of course. For example, there are some genders that are going to be left behind. So there's going to be genre. So the next question that we have about the challenges in the production, I mean, to face ourselves to the future. So I know we have already talking about this, and you have been mentioning this, but we would like to insist a little bit. I mean, what are the, how do you see, what are the new challenges for be creating back again? So I would like to start with Claudia. What do you think are going to be the challenges for the creation? Oh, my microphone was off. Okay, I believe that we have been saying, I don't want to repeat, to add some new things. I believe that everything it's been said here. But well, I would start by saying, well, something that is very important, of course, to this reconversion, like every reconversion, requires an investment, and it requires, therefore, there is a battle that the public investment in public cultures in a key moment like this is a debate in all the countries. And I believe that this has nothing to do with the production, that is a point of context of a scenario of our countries where the battle for the public investment in culture is very, very important, more than ever. And this investment also requires a reformulation for being aligned with the needs or necessities we've been checking, like the technological reconversion to support and to assist with the necessary know-how for these new models. So I believe that the government, in our case, I haven't heard Caroline that represents an state-owned institution in Canada, the policies and how fast the system reacts over there. I heard how she said, but in Latin America it's very different. I mean, we go in a different way, maybe slow, and definitely it's important to adequate instruments for budgeting the public system for the arts and cultures, for these new designs, for these new innovations, and for this installation of the technology. That is going to be an element that is going to stay in any case. So I'm going to mention some other things that haven't been said. I believe also that we are called to work in a cooperative or collaborative logic, transnational, to continue with the logic of the competence. I believe that in the Latin American level, we have an opportunity because of the common language. Digitalization facilitates the dynamic of collaborative work. We can now work without traveling. I believe that about the creative innovation, we have said a lot. I'm totally sure that this is going to arrive, and I believe it's key to take advantage of this time. Take advantage of this time of difficulty for traveling, where it's difficult to have international exchange. I mean, how to take advantage of this time to generate new communities. So we are very obsessed with that in working with transversal public. They permitted the digital situation. So I believe that in this new offer, these big offers online, digitalization offers a possibility to accompany the show experience, the play experience with more elements, mediations, elements, educations, elements that goes with the artistic fact by itself. I believe that the digital will permit us to innovate because we will be able to show other aspects of the creation, to show an artist trajectories or to see the behind the stage or the backstage. I mean, the fight or the battle is for the audience. We have a great potential, but the battle right now is for the audience. And there's, I believe that we need to pay a lot of attention with the technologies, with the algorithms, and with the marketing digital systems, and so on, with these crazy things of the metrics that finally shows, because the rigs is this big offer to end up being homogenizations does not guarantee effectively the plurality or the diversity of the offers. So I do believe that it's very important, those aspects that have been said, they are new aspects. I believe that the strategy of reaching new audiences nowadays need to be much more important nowadays. Well, opportunities is what we have been saying. I mean, from the crisis, there are new opportunities growing up, so we need to be able to identify it. So, Federico, what do you consider about the challenges? Well, I agree with Claudia. I agree with the philosophical spirit. I mean, we need to think about the opportunity that is being generated, understanding and recognizing the pains that 2020 has produced, but also it's a time to produce and to think towards the future in a different way without repeating the mistakes that we have committed in the past. So we have to be really paying attention. So I agree with Claudia deeply that one of the biggest challenges that we have in front of us is how to reach to those audiences and how to loyal those audiences, because sometimes the proposals are lost when the physical circuit around cities, like the cities are distributed. There are events, for example, in Buenos Aires, an independent theater is very different to the Corrientes theater or the Palermo theater. And the public, the audience knows. The one who wants to see a show in Abasto or in Corrientes, they know there was something very clear that was established by the geographical areas where they were located. Or, for example, the FIBA is international, but it happens the same to the Iberoamerican or Santiago Miri. The audiences they know what they are going to see, a German plate, and so on. For example, Latin American plate, if it's Latin American plate, it's going to be smaller. I mean, but we understand the expectation level in regards to the physical place or the nationality or in regards to the circuit, and that really organizes something. The problem is that I agree with Claudia, we need to work very deeply in the subject of the audiences, analyzing and trying to understand how it works. But not to repeat precisely because we are out of time, so I would say, I mean, I would like to mention something that we haven't mentioned yet. It has to do something, what I've been working, we've been working in this context in these days, and this talks about the production technology, which is working from the standpoint of Festival Buenos Aires to support the artists that are working about the formals notion. The possibility of a theater that could travel in concepts, in ideas, and so on, that does not imply the transit or the movements, big companies, because it generates many difficulties. But for example, a director could travel It might facilitate the realization of a play in a different territory in a project. And at the same time, this might guarantee what Caroline mentioned from the policies of support and is the interchange. Last year, for example, so we opened a Sharon Bell place. Sharon Bell didn't come from Paris to direct. He made a casting in that moment on Skype, not Zoom. Those days, in those days, he used Skype, and he selected two directors, and they were working in all the pre-production and in the designs with Sharon Bell. And then they made the representation of Sharon Bell that then he saw a generalized through the camera, and he was able to give some instructions. Sharon Bell, he did for many years, and for an environmental subject. Sharon Bell is made a political decision. He does not want to cooperate with the contamination of the planet, generating more flights and contaminating the carbon track. So he designed a protocols for the stage in the distance. So it's not only a scenic language, it's an scenic that is vertebrated by a protocols of the stage. So he can have a dialogue without traveling with local artists in different places around the world and to produce a dialogue. And this synergy is the one that today we need to work very, very strong. That is added to what Claudia said. When Lisandro Rodriguez in Buenos Aires, he made a project, a format theater. Santiago Amir bought it, but what Santiago Amir bought? They didn't buy the play that were 15 actors. No, he bought the idea. He bought the idea. Santiago Amir bought these ideas, and Lisandro was working in the middle of the popular strike in Santiago. So they didn't have to work in a play that was not talking about the play because it was written in Buenos Aires, and they make a different contest and rewriting in Santiago when Chile was discussing the future. Chile was in a discussion, absolutely discussion, a strong discussion and marvelous discussion about the future. So what was an Argentinian play that was produced from the context in Argentina in the middle of Chile? It has nothing to do. However, the festival bought a concept and an artist that generate the concept. In the trips that he did to Chile, he was able to take the Chilean energy and he was able to generate a very similar project that was generated in Buenos Aires, but with the problems and with the energy and the ideology from Chile. That model is the one that I believe in Latin America we have as possibility on the transit, for example, between the countries, but also because of the economical situation. So when today we see the amount of budget that is used in flight tickets, in hotels and ships that transport containers, all that money is money that will not go to the artist. If we could generate that whoever travel are the artists or the minds of the artist in terms of the creation and the language, at least inside Latin America, we have different economical situations, weak economical situations. We are going to have the possibility to generate these interchanges, and these interchanges generate a school, academy, know-hows, because when I have an artist talking with a different company to produce something that was created abroad, the results is going to be a mix. The outcome is going to be a mix. It's not going to be the exportations of another country. It's going to be the co-constructions of two energies that are all together in a dialogue where one of those modifies the other. And when this Argentinian director goes back to Santiago, it's not going to be the same when he arrived first because he was modified by this energy. It's very different to be in a theater, to create a play that was conceived for Buenos Aires, to have the lights, do the show, and then go to another country. Lisandro didn't have to go 4 times. Maybe flight tickets was the same, but in those 4 trips, Lisandro Rodrigo was able to participate in the strikes in Chile. He was modifying himself by the spirit. But I believe that in this moment we are producing something, circulation and dialogue at the same time. We are generating school that has to do with the thinking. I just wanted to say something. There is an economic subject that you were mentioning. I wanted to mention it, but it's very important also. The idea of investing huge amounts of money for 3 presential plays or 2 is what happened in the festivals that we love and we've been working. But also it's a model that faces a situation. I mean, the economic crisis, the situation that they are living with the pandemic, also forces us to have different reflections, ethic reflection about the subject of how we are obtaining the resources. So I believe it's important, and I totally agree with what you have said. Thank you. It's very, very interesting, and I mean, it's a whole reflection in all the senses. And ethic, of course, because from the creations, what Federico mentioned is that it's a system of production, of creation that it's been given. And now it's perfect for the moment. Besides this, I believe that we are just starting. I mean, we are trying to define, if we continue exploring this project that you have in mind, I mean, the project that you are developing, if we continue exploring, maybe we are going to generate very important information or know-how in regards to the productions matter, well, in all the areas, in a festival, in marketing, in reformulation of the marketing, and the reformulation of the artistic language. I believe that it's very interesting. So I believe that we are finding once again the boost to generate these networks we talked, that we are trying to generate, where we can get connected to different places of planets. Before continuing with the Caroline answer, I want to remind you that you can ask questions by using the chat. We are very short of time, so we're going to try to. Caroline, I'm going to give you the floor. Thank you. Your microphone is off.
Yes, trying to unmute it. That was a very interesting discussion. So perhaps what I can contribute would be, and I'm going to go back to something that Claudia raised in her first comment, which was the need to make a public case for supporting the arts, because we do know that at a time when artists are struggling to work, we do need to invest in creation. This is clear. But at a time when the pandemic has had an impact on every single sector, not just the arts, we also have to make a stronger case for public support for the arts, given the huge needs in health, in education, in the justice system, in all of these other aspects of life, in the business sector where things have collapsed as well. And I think the big fundamental question to ask in this area is, when we say who, the need to support who and for which audiences, for who. So it comes back in a sense to that fundamental question of access and equity, in a sense. And what is it that the arts can do so that they speak to more individuals, they include more individuals, and they can actually be a voice in rebuilding a broader society? Because it does feel to me that creation needs to be something that has, and you have said this, it has an audience in mind, but often when we've looked at some of our large resource intensive productions, the audience has been quite narrow. And in our country, that narrow audience has actually been narrowing and aging over time. So to Federico's earlier point, there was already a change in the way generations were consuming culture. So at this point, it feels to me as though that question of who is the audience and who are the artists making the work is really a very critical one for us to ask ourselves, in addition to, yes, we need to invest in creating. We do ask ourselves in Canada, and I wonder if this has come to mind for you, while we're investing in a number of artistic creations during this period of time, what will happen in a year or two when there's still the potential that it's difficult to present this work? Where will it go? How will it find an audience? Unless we do immediately, as we're already thinking about these creations, start thinking about other ways to disseminate them. So coming back to digital again. Because even in our own small ecosystems here, there's a feeling we will have a glut of performances and no audiences for them, even if the pandemic is no longer affecting the ability to see a work in a venue. So that's the flip side of investing in creation, is what will be the result of that? So I think we need to do it because artists are out of work, and if artists are out of work, they will leave their practices, and we will potentially lose an entire generation of creators, which is a very big concern for all of us. On the other hand, we want to make sure that when we're investing in creation, we're bringing in the new voices that have not been heard previously. I'll give you an example of something we just did in Canada. We created what we called a micro innovation grant, and it was called Digital Original. So it was only 5,000 Canadian dollars. I don't know how that would translate in terms of your currencies, but $5,000 is a small amount of money to do a digital piece. We were absolutely overwhelmed with applications for this particular program. And in a week or so, we're going to see the results of about 500 to 1,000 productions that were made by individuals, most of whom had never had access to public arts funding before. Now, that was an extraordinary discovery. It wasn't the organizations or individuals who are established who were using this micro grant. This was a completely new and an unexpected group of voices who came to us with ideas for expression and who created these works. And they're reaching completely different audiences than we've ever seen before, because they come from completely different backgrounds. So just to say that even with a small experiment like that, we've opened that question of who's making art, who gets funded to make art, and then who actually sees it.
Ok, se me silenció el micrófono a mí también. Gracias, Carolyn. Muy interesante.
Okay, Caroline, thank you very much. Very, very interesting. I believe that we can somehow formulate what we have discussed. Maybe we could talk, or we can say, we can summarize the following ideas. I mean, we need to strengthen the internal market. We need to potentialize the new audience or public, and also we need to generate very close connections with this new public that is coming, and they really know this digital media, and we cannot forget the theater, because there's always been theater, and they know the experience very good. Another possibility, the sustainability of the model with new initiatives. And what I mean is with the sustainability of their business models and also of the artistic models. As we mentioned before, which I believe is very interesting. So I believe that these are the great conclusions. We have only one interesting question on the chat. I will ask you to answer very, very fast and short, of course. The question is, how do you analyze the monetization at the place online?
Entonces le doy la palabra rápidamente a Claudia.
Claudia.
Bueno, mira, voy a decir, hay dos experiencias. Al inicio
There are two experiences.
se puso muchas cosas gratuitas.
There were many things that were for free.
No sé cómo dicen ustedes, o sea, con donación a gusto.
There were many things for free online. And it was generous. It was generous. The audience was generous with this. Then we've been formalizing the prices. The truth is, it has to be closer than the presentials. A quarter, 25%. This makes very, very difficult. A marginal monetization that does not, I mean, never a play, it's being supported by the tickets, even though it's commercial. But in general, the independent theater, it's never been, I mean, or not even our festivals, are totally financed with tickets. If monetization was low in presentials, with the digital, it's going to be much more difficult, marginal almost.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Fede, ¿qué opinas al respecto?
Federico, what's your opinion? Here, we're just saying at the very beginning it was for free, and then we established a fee. In some cases, it worked better. It was working very good. For example, a room with capacity for 500, for example, they sold 8,000 tickets. So for that company, for that commercial, they sold many tickets in all the country. It was amazing, but they have the actors, so that generates attraction. I might say that we need to think about different places that have to do with the equation, with this usage of the image. The problem that is associated right here in regards to the image, that is a discussion that we have, the TV has done, but the theaters, in the case we continue with these digitals, we're going to have to do it as well. And the other subject that I believe is important is the relation with the platforms. How we can have an artistic community that is generating free content for platforms that then generate content. So how we are going to give content to these platforms. So I believe that there are discussions, very new discussions. We don't know about this. And we are going to start seeing in the territory or in the transnational organization, because right now we are in a different area. So I believe that the content subject in regards to the platforms is something that we need to start taking into account, monetization. And Caroline, what is your perception about monetization in this case?
I do think, Federico, you raise a very important question that we are starting to address in Canada. Our government has announced that they will be looking to create a different kind of relationship with the platforms. But I will say that the bigger answer is that we don't have an answer. I really think that we have a big struggle ahead of us to establish a remuneration model that works for artists and producers and organizations online. It's not here yet. And it will take a considerable amount of expertise, quite frankly, that is beyond our own sector to help us achieve that. And another very important piece for us will be to educate artists and cultural organizations about questions of intellectual property. This is not something that we're familiar with in the arts sector, and it is a critical piece for artists moving forward into the screen world to understand their rights, And I know from our perspective as a funder, I feel a personal responsibility to build legal clinics and workshops to enable that kind of learning so that artists can actually better defend themselves. But that being said, there's no question that we have a clear answer to this at this point in time, and it will be urgent.
Completamente de acuerdo, hay que generar una sinergia entre las
Yes, totally agree. We need to generate synergy and between the government to facilitate, to establishing a new conversation with the digital platforms, with the artists, so that we can understand how to work. We are going to be living in this for a while, so we are going to integrate the way we create and to produce. It's going to stay. It's going to stay. Thank you very much, Will, and we're going to close right now. Thank you, Danny. I have a specific question. Viva, do you know how Santiago Mil is going to work this year? I know more or less because I am not in the festivals, but yes, the festivals, we have the programming right now. It's a hybrid format. It's very reduced, but there will be some trips. There is a lot of experiential formats where people can have different individual experiences, and it does not require agglomerations. And there is going to be intervention in public space, in neighborhoods. There is a lot of energy in, first of all, in doing it. There were many people who think that in these circumstances was not going to be possible, but it was confirmed. Well, this week, Santiago has reversed in the face of the pandemic. The city was crazy. Everybody was on the street. Everybody was drinking, and well, and there was an exponential increase growth in the pandemic. But everything that is scheduled could be done in this phase. We are in a restricted situation, but yes, it's going to be done. But it's very strong. We're going to have a great program, a TV program. There's going to be a great format of TV. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. To generate an identity of the events and all this, what is going to be really fragmented because, and yes, some theaters are going to be used with reduced amount of people, and it's going to be in streaming, and it's going to be reduced. Let's hope in January we can keep that.
Hay coproducciones, hay mucho trabajo de esto que...
There's too much work to be done. Artists coming, working with national companies, and so on. There are productions outside Santiago. Yes, it's going to be fast. Everything is going to be all right. Okay, thank you very much for these times. And Caroline, what is going to happen with CINARS or with the international festivals in Canada?
For now, CINA was virtual this year. So we will wait to see what the decision is for next year. Nobody is predicting whether there will be any live events or festivals in the summer. It's still too soon. And the second wave is serious enough that we honestly, I'm not sure that anybody would bet that by June, we will be okay.
Okay. Gracias. Bueno, pues este es el cierre de nuestro webinar. Muchas gracias a todos por...
Thank you very much for this webinar and for receiving this invitation. So the truth for us to receive all these experiences of what is happening in Latin America and North America and Canada is very important. The idea, as we said at the very beginning, is to keep these dialogue and conversations among us so that we can comply these goals and achieve these goals that we have in the webinar. And these conversations among countries are going to be very interesting. So thank you very much. It's important to have Canada with important policies very different to the Latin American countries. And well, I believe that these experiences are going to be very important and to learn what we can do in our disciplines in here. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the people present here, and thank you for being here. And thanks to ProColombia for giving us this space and the opportunity to be here to reach different points to people in Colombia. And we are going to have all this process of adequation of the companies, and we hope to visit and back again face to face. Thank you very much. Embassy of Canada, thank you very much and for all the support. And thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias por estar acá.
Cuídense.
Gracias.